Would you prefer to be able to have a perfect accent and mimic words but not understand what you're saying? Or would you prefer to be able to speak the language clearly, communicate, even if the people you're speaking to know you're not a native speaker? Amazingly, some people worry about these things. I don't mean to sound negative, because some people really want to get this right. They want to sound Spanish, they want to sound authentic, they want to do the best possible job they can when they're speaking. I understand that, I fully support that. That's an awesome thing to try and think about. But it's amazing how many people online are searching for this question. How do I roll my R's in Spanish? You know, the R sound that you get in the middle of words. I mean, it's great if you can do it, but I promise you, if you can't, that's absolutely fine. I mean, I think there are Spanish and native Spanish-speaking people who can't do this, and it's not common necessarily in all parts of the Spanish-speaking world. So again, it comes back to what is important to you and what is generally important in language learning. If you are a perfectionist and you want to speak the language perfectly with not a hint of your original native accent, whatever language is your first language, then it's going to take you a while. You might have to go through a period of mimicry, practicing, putting it on like an actor, taking on a personality, really forcing yourself to practice words over and over again. And the rolling of the R, which happens at the beginning of a Spanish word, and when it's a double R in the middle, it comes. You can probably train yourself to do that. And yeah, if that's fun for you, go for it. Knock yourself out. Awesome. I'm here to tell you it doesn't matter if you can't. And it's the sort of thing you can quite easily not worry about and have a fantastic time learning Spanish and speaking Spanish. It's one of those tiny little things that if it's important to you, you should strive for it and you should go for it. But it's not a deal breaker and it's not a roadblock or anything that's going to get in the way of you communicating with people. This then leads on to another question, which is very common, which is, do I need to sound like a native to be understood? Now, no. Simple answer. You do not have to sound like a native. There is an important distinction to make here, though. You do need to pronounce the Spanish words correctly. And by that I mean Spanish words will have stresses and parts where you have to say them in a certain tone or give them a certain emphasis in certain positions. Now, this is often when an accent is involved, and an accent is just a little line above a vowel in Spanish. And there is a tilde which goes over the N, but that's one specific use. And that makes the ny, the ny sound in España. But generally, accents in Spanish are just a little line going over the vowel. What this does is it tells you that when you're saying that part of the word, you give it a little extra emphasis. So in the word acción, the accent's above the O, the final O. Acción. And the I-O-N, and there are thousands of words in Spanish that end in I-O-N, the accent is always over that O. So you know those words like television, for example, televisión will be pronounced with a little extra push at the end. So that's okay. But if you said televisión in Spanish, it'd still be understood. It's not a problem. When it comes to verbs, and we've talked in other videos about what verbs are, and if you go through my course, we laid out very, very clearly. Verbs are super important, but they're not there to be scared of. When we're pronouncing verbs and we're using them, we do need to make sure that we're pushing the correct part of the verb. And there are patterns and things that we can do there to make sure that you're doing that right all the time. Easy peasy, no problem. That's where, yes, it is important to say the word with the correct tonality, to say it with the correct parts of the word being emphasized, but you don't have to sound perfectly Spanish to be understood. The accuracy of the language you are using to communicate, it's separate a little bit from the accent that you use. It's always nice to sound a little bit like the country where you're hoping to speak your Spanish, and you can absolutely force yourself and train yourself to do that. And it may come naturally to you. If you've got a good ear for mimicry and you can copy things, if you're good at accents, for example, then you might want to play with that and put it on over the top. Because you can say acción, which is not quite right. You can say acción, a little bit better. If you're learning and want to use the pronunciation from Spain, then you might want to throw in the TH on some of those C's, like in the word for cyclist. I would say ciclista, because my Spanish is from Peru. It doesn't matter, you'll be understood. I think this is part of the journey of letting go of some of these ultimatums or these must-haves. Speaking should still be about enjoying what you're saying. And you don't need to worry about sounding perfectly Spanish or Mexican or Peruvian or Colombian or Chilean. If you're exposed to that a lot, you will naturally pick up a little bit of it. But what would you prefer? Would you prefer to be able to have a perfect accent and mimic words but not understand what you're saying? Or would you prefer to be able to speak the language clearly, communicate, even if the people you're speaking to know you're not a native speaker? I don't know. What are your priorities? It doesn't matter. If you want to speak this language, don't let these little things hold you back. It's really important to grasp onto the fact that the actual language itself is achievable. You can do this and you can get there. So please, when you're thinking about these tiny things like accent, it can come over time, but don't let it be a roadblock or a barrier to you starting. Really important to get that journey started. Okay, so if this has been useful, please make sure that you think about checking out the free hour lesson that I offer in my Facebook group. You can get in touch, leave a comment, or just find me on Facebook. And if you want to see some other videos that I've done on languages, there are plenty to choose from, and I'm adding more every week. A little bit about me as well, and why I went to Peru and what I did there and my love of languages. So I've written about that quite a bit and also put some videos together. Also, if there's anything you want to hear and you would like me to talk about, or questions that you particularly find interesting, then do reach out and I'll try to answer those as well.